Good morning. The March 16th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order in the interest of promoting health and safety. As we continue to deal with COVID-19, the Board of Estimates meets virtually. I'm pretty sure everyone is well aware of the mayor's executive announcement a week or so ago that City Hall will be open come April the 4th. I think as it relates to communication from the mayor's office, as well as the comptroller's office and the Office of City Council President, the procedures and protocols will be communicated out accordingly and appropriately to the general public. So be on the lookout. At this time, I'd like to ask the board to turn its attentions to 3 items published on the non-routine agenda. These items are on page 142, number 10 and 11, Department of Public Works, WC 1252, Grantley Road in the vicinity water main replacement, as well as on pages 143 and 144, number 12 and number 13, Department of Public Works, WC 1410, urgent need water infrastructure rehabilitation improvements, phase 1, fiscal year 21. And then lastly, on page 145, number 14 and number 15, Department of Public Works, WC 1285, Caroline Street and vicinity water main replacement. For each of these items, a protest has been received by Metro Industries. Since our last meeting, there has been a court proceedings occurring related to these recommendations. Recommended awards. Staff from the law department reach out to my office, request the board again defer action on these items today in order for the legal situation to play out. Since this item has been deferred once already, the newly enacted board of regulations required subsequent request by approval of the board. At this time, I move to defer these 3 items until our April the 6th meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and probably seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. These 3 items that I read off earlier are now deferred. At this time, I would like to ask Comptroller Henry for any corrections, additions, or noted abstentions to today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President. On pages 33 and 35, item number 1, Bureau of Procurement contract number 08000, Human Resource Information, Automatic Processing, and E-Time Enterprise Payroll Systems Licensing. On page 35 in the line reading 31, renewal pending board approval, the number $4,800,000 should be $0. Also on page 35, the total contract value should be $66,333,117.24. Mr. President, there is one walk-on item for the agenda today. It was submitted by the Department of Recreation and Parks and is a transfer of funds for AFRAM 2022. Because this is a walk-on, it will automatically be on the non-routine agenda. The department is walking this item onto the agenda because it is time critical to ensure funds are available to pay vendors for this unique festival, which will be held on Juneteenth weekend in Druid Hill Park. I will now read the board memo for the record. From Reginald R. Moore, Executive Director, Department of Recreation and Parks, to the Honorable President and members of the Board of Estimates. The board is requested to authorize and approve the transfer of $525,875 to the Baltimore Civic Fund for the 2022 AFRAM Festival. Please see the attached budget. The amount of $525,875 is to be transferred to and issued out of the Baltimore Civic Fund AFRAM account 1001-000-122500-607004. The AFRAM Festival is a celebration of African American life, music, and culture. This family-oriented event is filled with entertainers, children's activities, arts, history, education, financial literacy, employment and job training, health and wellness, and more. The Baltimore AFRAM Festival is presented by Mayor Brandon M. Scott and the City of Baltimore with the support of the Advisory Board and Steering Committee. Mr. President, I move this item be included on today's agenda as a non-routine item.
Second. Mr. President, we can't hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been a motion on the, and probably seconded to have this welcome item added to non-routine agenda. At this time, I'll take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. That will be added on as a non-routine agenda. Turn the floor back over to you, Ms. Comptroller, and I'm sure if you had any additional items to add.
Oh, yep, I still got a lot. Thanks, Mr. President. Moving on to protests on page 136, Department of Finance Master Services Agreement. A protest and supplements to protests were received from Kudak Rock LLP, representing ACI Payments Incorporated. A response to the protest was received from DLA Piper LLP on behalf of Paymentus Corporation. On pages 142 and 143, items number 10 and 11, Department of Public Works, WC 1252 Grantley Road and vicinity, water main replacement and transfer of funds. A protest and supplemental protests were received from Metro Industries. A response to the protest was received from Monumental Paving and Excavating. Pages 143 and 144, items number 12 and 13, Department of Public Works, WC 1410, urgent need water infrastructure rehabilitation and improvements, phase 1 FY21 and transfer of funds. A protest and supplements to protests were received from Metro Industries. A protest and supplement to protests were received from R.E. Harrington Plumbing and Heating Company. Pages 144 and 145, items number 14 and 15, Department of Public Works, WC 1285, Caroline Street and vicinity water main replacements. A protest and supplemental protest were received from Metro Industries. A response to the protest was received from Wright, Constable and Skeen LLP on behalf of Civil Construction LLC. The following item is being withdrawn. Page 52, item number 12, Bureau of Procurement, Report of Emergency Procurement is being withdrawn at the request of the city purchasing agent. Page 108, Mayor's Office Amendment number 2 to non-construction consultant agreement is being deferred until April 6th at the request of the city administrator. The following items are moved to the non-routine agenda. On page 4, item number 1, Department of Transportation extra work order number 004, TR 16301 replacement of bridge number BC 4202, Broning Highway over Colgate Creek and associated roadway improvements. Page 8, Office of Civil Rights and Wage Enforcement, prevailing wage rate recommendation for 2022. Pages 33 to 35, item number 1, Bureau of Procurement, contract number 08000, Human Resource Information, Automatic Processing, and E-Time Enterprise Payroll Systems Licensing. Pages 58 and 59, item number 19, Bureau of Procurement, Report of Emergency Procurement for BSIT. Pages 60 to 62, item number 20, Bureau of Procurement, Report of Emergency Procurement, DOT. Page 75, Department of Finance, Fire Department Special Event Rate Increase. Page 136, Department of Finance, Master Payment Agreement. No items are being moved to the routine agenda. The board has received the following abstentions from the Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott. Pages 56 and 57, item number 18, Bureau of Procurement, Report of Emergency Procurement with Johns Hopkins University for COVID-19 International Vaccine Center Education and Training. Pages 79 and 80, Health Department, Agreement with the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. And page 81, Health Department, Agreement with the Johns Hopkins University. There are no changes to the agenda and no rejection of recommended awards. Thank you, Mr. President.
No, thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this time, I ask for a motion to approve and adopt the opening statement read by the Comptroller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The opening statement is adopted. I now direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated March the 14th, 2022. Identify matters to be considered as routine agenda items together with any corrections, additions, were noted abstentions, and no votes that were noted by the comptroller. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve all the items contained in the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda items have now been adopted. On to our first non-routine agenda item. It can be found on page 4. Number 1, Department of Transportation Extra Work Order Number 1, TR 16301, on the replacement of Bridge BC 4202 on Browning Highway off of Colgate Creek and associated roadway improvements. On behalf of the Department of Transportation, we have Director Steve Sharkey to speak to this contract. Mr. Sharkey, the floor is yours.
Good morning, all. Yes, we are here to discuss the change order on Browning Highway over Colgate Creek. So I also have Corinne Johnson here. If Corinne could pop up, that would be great too. She is the Deputy Director and Chief Engineer as well to assist. So basically, this is a change order for a job for Browning Highway over Colgate Creek. We've got a few change orders here dealing with some changes that were made last minute during early in construction to ensure environmental safety, or not environmental safety, or environmental improvement. So the original job was supposed to be built using a causeway. So a causeway is almost I guess, a new road built into the water, so to speak. Scott or Corinne, could you say that correctly, the engineering terms for me?
No, that's accurate. Basically, you construct a very low, like a roadway, essentially, either in water or very low water, so that you essentially have a roadway to be able to access the structure and do the work.
Yeah, and so as we really got into actually putting the permits together, we found that the cost of the causeway, as well as the environmental impact of the causeway, would have been much higher than expected. So we worked to make sure that to change to a trestle system, which is a sort of an addendum or adjacent thing that holds onto the bridge, where the pieces and material can be brought back and forth, as opposed to a causeway, which is a road underneath the bridge, which is more environmentally impactful. So we did change that late into the game, so to speak, which required a number of change orders, including this one. Corinne, can you go a little bit further into this?
Yes. So just to clarify, the issues with the causeway was that it was determined that it was going to need to be much larger, and so, like you said, physically there would have been more environmental impacts, but also the cost to construct that, as well as to fully remove the entire structure out of the water, would have been a major expense. So because of the environmental concerns, that's when the trestle system was evaluated. And so basically it attaches to the existing bridge and allows the contractor to move materials and everything back and forth and not be in the water. So as basically this prompted red line 2. And so a lot of these change orders tied to this are associated with these early on changes and the inability of the contractor to begin starting on the project. And so although there were the previous executive work, extra work orders that included some time for initial delays of the permit and things like that, there are still overall certain days needed for the actual contract for them to be able to start the work and then continue the project. And so that's what this EWO seeks to accomplish, is just to basically give the extra time needed to fully complete the project. So currently the contractor is about 75% complete in constructing the trestle. The crane is on site and they're getting ready to begin demolition of the old bridge. I think that kind of hits one.
Is that everything from Department of Transportation, Ms. Johnson or Director Sharkey?
Yeah, if you guys have questions.
Yeah, at this point, I just want to make sure you were finished your presentation. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? I see Comptroller Bill Henry's hand up. I yield the floor to you, Mr. Comptroller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. So just, I'm trying to make sure I have a better understanding of the timeline. Did DOT actually start building a causeway and then stop?
No.
Okay, so somewhere between when the project was bid out and then when you started actually bidding it, did you change from
It was-
building a causeway to building a trestle?
So it was all tied to the permit. Initially with this project, we had a concept approval for all of the erosion incentive control plans. And so initially, when the contractor received it, there were still some things pending from that permit. And then then basically throughout that process, that's when it was realized that there were going to be issues and with the sizing of the causeway, excuse me, of the sizing of the causeway. And so then that's what prompted additional conversations with the permitting agency and the designer to figure out what other options exist, as well as with the contractor. And then from that point, it was determined that per the permit that we needed to do the work outside of the water. And so that kind of changed the approach of the project. And that's when the trestle system was then introduced as a means to complete the project without impacting the water.
Is there some threshold that's in regs or policy that requires DOT to, if the project changes by X%, it's considered a significant change, and you would rebid the actual project rather than can just make a bunch of change orders to the old one?
There is no written threshold, but that is a right of departments. In this case, there was also grants pending that were going to be, that if the project wasn't moved forward, that some of those grants would not have been given up as well. So it did get rushed.
Do you have the amount of those grants available?
Scott, do you know the amount?
Well, the Tiger grant was a 50-50. So 50% local, 50% federal dollars.
And that money would have been lost if we had said, we're going to have to do this project differently, and we're going to go back and bid out the actual project we want to do?
There was a timeline attached to the Tiger grant. And so had we canceled this advertised project and then went back to the drawing board and re-advertised it, then we would have lost the 50% that the federal government was contributing to this project at that time.
And do we have any grasp of how hard it would have been to get that money back for the actual project?
The grant, we wouldn't have been able to get any funding under the grant anymore. The time would have expired.
No, I mean, but could we apply? Oh, so you can't apply for another Tiger grant for a later project?
Not for that grant, no.
Yeah, and at the time, especially with President Trump there, the federal DOT was being very stickler about the timeliness of the grants and the time rules for bridges.
Okay, well, the reason I'm maybe let me, before I opine, let me ask a couple more questions. This extra work order makes the project approximately 32% over budget, with more than $5.8 million now in extra work orders. This is the fourth extra work order. Is there, does DOT anticipate more? Are there any projections of cost?
Well, two pieces. So first, it's over budget off the bid, but actually the original engineer's estimate was higher, about 25 million. So the bids came in lower than expected, but then were, I guess, higher. We are expecting at least one more change order for a little bit less than $1 million, but the rest of the job, we're not expecting change orders, but we're not foreseeing any either.
So does the Tiger grant cover 50% of whatever we spend, or 50% of what it was originally budgeted to be?
So it's 50% of what was budgeted. However, every time we have any type of change order, we go through communications with state highway administration and federal administration to determine their participation. And so each extra work order is treated differently to determine what they will participate in. So it's not a set number, but originally, yes, 50% of the bid items they were or are covering.
So of the 3 previous extra work orders we've done, how much has the Tiger grant been increased to cover how over budget we currently are?
For this particular extra work order, the feds are not contributing to this one, but other ones they would be involved in those discussions.
And what I was looking for is about how much did they participate in the previous 3?
So they participated in extra work order 1. So the trestle system itself was obviously not a bid item, so they weren't included in that one, but it was 50% of extra work order number 1. So that would have been about 38,000 or so.
And then 2 and 3?
Because the trestle system was not a bid item, the grant did not cover that.
Okay, so they did an extra $30-some thousand in the first one, and then they have not participated in $5.7 something million of the other extra work orders.
No, they have not.
And what was the total original budget for this project?
It was 23.6 million.
23.6 million. So the feds are kicking in almost 12 million. And so if we go 6 million over, DOT's thinking is this is still better than doing the project without the Tiger grant.
So
Correct.
it's 50,
Yeah.
well, yes, but one caveat, it is 50% of the actual bid items. So not the engineer's estimate. So they're not going to give us 50% of the engineer's estimate, because that would still be higher than what the actual bid items were.
Okay. So if the board approves this extra work order today, the project's completion date will be extended until May 10th, 2024, when it was initially intended to be completed by December of 2020. What level of confidence does DOT have in the new timeline?
Well, we have a very high confidence right now in the timeline. Obviously, all of this was tied to early on, kind of unforeseeable delays and everything tied to the causeway and trestle system. So they are starting work. They're engaged in the project, and so we and the contractor are ready to proceed ahead. So we don't anticipate any other major delays.
Okay. This one's going to be a little bit more subjective. Knowing now how all of this has played out, is there any, oh, that's weird. Sharky, you're on 2 different boxes. And okay, that's okay. All right. Man, that threw me. If you could go back and redo how this project played out, now knowing that you were going to end up making this change, what would or could DOT have done differently?
So I've got a couple things. So the first thing is I think bridge projects are too tight of a timeline for Tiger grants, for us at least.
Okay.
Contracting in our city and our state just The bridges take a long time. They take a long time everywhere, but they take a long time here. So the bridge projects, the Tiger grant projects have shorter timelines than really work for what we do here. So that's the number one. Overall, the second piece about bridge projects is the way that we fund bridge projects, and this is universal, not necessarily to this particular piece, is that we fund bridge projects with federal money from the start. So federal and local money from the start. So, and this is a different type of federal money, but it's 80%, 20%. So federal does 80% of the bridge, we do 20% of the bridge. This is not the Tiger grant, this is extra money. So in other cases, we start with that, but we start using that money from the beginning. But there's a 10-year time clock from the minute you start using that federal money that the job has to be complete for. I believe that we need to find ways to put more local money up front for the design to give more time on the back end with the bridges. We're trying to learn some more from the state. The state has some tricks that they use to possibly do things, but we need to put more local money up front on bridges and more federal money on the back end of the bridge projects. So those are two things that I'm, trying to move towards.
Okay, that's a good takeaway. Thank you. Last question is, do the construction signs on the bridge get updated in terms of what is now the expected completion date?
Yes, we're working with the contractor on that and expect to have those updated within 3 weeks.
Okay. All right. Mr. President, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from other members of the board? Hearing and seeing none at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Next up, we are on the non-routine agenda. It can be found on page 8. Office of Civil Rights and Wage Enforcement Prevailing Wage Rate Recommendation 2022. This request is to approve the recommended prevailing wage rates for this year. On behalf of the Office of Civil Rights and Wage Enforcement, we have Director Dana Moore. We have Chief Equity Officer Dana Moore here to speak on the recommended rates. Chief Equity Officer, Ms. Moore, the floor is yours.
Good morning to this honorable board, City Council President Mosby, Mayor Scott, City Solicitor Shea, Comptroller Henry, and Director Mitchell. It's good to see all of you. I am joined this morning by Deputy Director Kaylin Young. We are here. I am wearing 2 hats, both as the Chief Equity Officer for the City of Baltimore and Director of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. We'll be working to get that name changed officially if that's what we need to do. But we're here pursuant to Article 5, Section 25-1 to present and explain our recommendations for revising the prevailing wage. This applies to city contracts, city construction contracts that are over an amount of $5,000. The law, the prevailing wage law, relates to laborers, mechanics, and apprentices, and you can find that at Article 25, Section 4, Section 25-4. So the law requires, among other things, regular payment of workers, which is really, really important, posting of the amount of the prevailing wage that workers are to be paid, and an annual review of those wages, and which is why we're here today. Section 25-16 provides that this honorable board, it's the Board of Estimates that has the total purview of reviewing and revising the prevailing wage, and that's to happen at least every year, once a year. So the members of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights Wage Division undertook a pretty comprehensive review of all of the wages that apply to this category of worker pursuant to city contracts, and determined that overall there should be an increase of 3.58%. And my deputy, who is the mathematician in this office, and perhaps even for the city, is going to drill down and explain a little bit deeper on the math. I've learned it never pays to argue with someone who was a math major when you were an English major. So we don't do that. But anyway, we want to call particular attention to the rates for laborers, and here's why. We found when we began this review that the rates for laborers had not been increased for almost a decade. And the reason that hadn't happened is because there was really not an advocate that was advancing that those wages be increased. We brought into our deliberations Mayor Scott's mandate, really, that Baltimore be more equitable and that we apply an equity lens to all that we do. When we looked at this, we determined it really was not equitable that there be one class of worker that never got a raise, an increase in their wages. So looking at all sorts of information, we determined that that rate should be increased. That was the equitable thing to do. Even though laborers really didn't have an advocate, we would stand in those shoes and advocate on their behalf. So the consequence is a significant increase in the hourly rate for laborers. That rate rises to $22 an hour. And if you annualize that, that's about $43,000 per year, which is still low, but it's far better than where we were. So we were really pleased to be able to come to that determination. We're asking that this board support that recommendation, endorse that recommendation, raise some of these rates across the board. And I will defer to Deputy Young to talk a little bit about what we're going to do different going forward in terms of technology and how we got to these numbers. Deputy Young.
Greetings, member of the board. Thank you, Director Moore. Kaylin Young, Office of Equity and Civil Rights. So just a few things as it pertains to the numbers. First and foremost, as you know, there are 4 classes for the prevailing wage. Class 1 is rates went up 3.9%, which is a total dollar change of $61.01. Class 2, 1.19%, a total dollar change of 7.3%. Class 3, there's no change, and then Class 5, a 5.77% change. Dollar amount of $46.98. One of the things that Director Moore mentioned was that we're changing or working to change the process by which we determine what these prevailing wages are. Currently, the process requires for the various contractors to submit via a survey that we send out the various wages that are paid out throughout the year for these contracts, and then we take that data and we compile it and make these changes. At times, there's insufficient data, as it was the case with the laborers for years, wherein where there's not sufficient data, we can't make a change. The difficulty with that, of course, is that there are individuals who do participate in the survey, and then there are those who are not. And so one of the pieces of feedback we received was that those who participate are at times seemingly penalized for those who do not participate. The good thing is going forward, we've been working with Chris Lundy and Embu with regard to implementation of B2G now. There's a back-end tracker called Lgp Tracker that we're going to be implementing. This is something that the BOE approved years ago, just hasn't been implemented in this office. And so we're working on that to make that happen, so that way the next time we come before this body, we'll have that data. What the tracker allows us for, as the contracts are put in and as the wages and payrolls are submitted to our office, we can then put that information in a database, or rather the contractors are putting it in the database, makes it much more searchable and usable for us. And therefore, we're not losing data. We're not relying on them to bring us that data after the fact. We'll have that data on the front end to be able to make these determinations. And so I think that wraps it up, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam CEO and Mr. Young. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and probably seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item has been approved. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 33 through 35. Number 1, Bureau Procurement Contract. Number 8,000, Human Resources Information, Automatic Processing, E-Time, and Enterprise Payroll System Licensing with ADP. On behalf of the Bureau of Procurement, we have Director Ty Carter, and we also have Chief Keisha Brown from Procurement. At this time, I'm not sure if Chief Brown or Director Carter, the order that you plan to go in, but the floor is yours, however you choose.
Good morning, Honorable Board President Mosby, Mayor Scott, Comptroller Henry, I'm Keisha Brown. I serve as the acting Chief Procurement Officer for City of Baltimore. We respectfully come before you today asking for renewal of contract 08000, Human Resource Information, Automatic Processing, E-Time, and Enterprise Payroll System licensing with ADP Inc. There is no additional funds being requested at this time.
Understood. And anything from Mr. Carter? Director Carter?
I do not have anything to add, sir.
Thank you. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday, the Bureau of Procurement notified our office that the initial request for this contract to renew the term and add 4.8 million in value was incorrect. And as I noted in the changes to the opening statement, what procurement meant to do was request a no-cost extension and then come back to the board and request additional funds. Does either BSIT, procurement, or anyone else have a projection as to what the eventual amount of those costs will be and when that request might come back to the board?
Good morning. This is Henry Raymond, Director of Finance. So good morning, President Mosby, Mayor Scott, Controller Henry, honorable members of the board. In response to your question, I would imagine that we'll come back to the board in the next 2 to 3 meetings. And at this point, we do not have a specific dollar amount because the final scope of work is still under negotiation with ADP.
Well, actually, thank you, Mr. Raymond. That's a great segue to the next question, which is, and I'm not sure if this is a question for finance or a question for BSIT or a question for the larger steering committee for the Workday implementation. What is the plan for winding down the reliance on ADP for historical data access? Do we have a projection for when we will have that historical data fully integrated into Workday and not have to keep paying ADP to maintain it?
I'll defer to BSIT.
Sure. So we have overwhelming majority of our data, the things that we need from ADP are more in the lines of services. We have been reporting over the last several months historical data from the data that we have received to meet a number of requests. So the goal is, when you say fully integrated to an IT guys, that means one thing, but at the end of the day, we have our data, we can report from it. The kinds of tools that we use to fully integrate it into Workday is something that we have to figure out. And the types of services that we are going to need from ADP, and if they have any of our additional data, that will be sorted out in the next several months, as Director Raymond said. So from a timing perspective, you can expect that we will wean ourselves away from ADP fully within the year and be fully self-contained within Workday or outside systems for reporting as necessary.
So that's, first of all, that's a great point. Thank you for, I should have known better than to use the term fully integrated unless we were talking about the truly aspirational goals. Let me kind of reframe it from a customer service perspective. As a city employee, if I want to pull up an electronic copy of my 2020 W-2 or my 2021 W-2, I am still going to the ADP portal to pull that up.
Correct.
And if I go to Workday, clearly there's a placeholder where I'm supposed to be able to find those kind of tax documents, but right now there's nothing there. What I'm looking for is a projection of when will I, as a city employee, be able to go to Workday and pull up my 2020, 2021, and if by then the 2022 W-2s.
Certainly by next tax season, those components will be fully integrated into Workday.
That's what I was looking for. Okay, Mr. President, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this point, are there any other questions or concerns from other members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Next up, we're going to go to pages 58 and 59, number 19, Bureau Procurement, request to accept report of an emergency procurement for city during COVID-19 pandemic. With City Hall set to reopen next month, there's been interest in how and when citizens will be able to engage with the BOE, the council administrative agencies like the BMZA and Liquor Board. This item deals with the emergency procurement for equipment needed to meet in hybrid fashion. Unfortunately, that equipment has been delayed, but we'll get an update this morning as it relates to the plan moving forward. Once again, we have Director Todd Carter and Procurement Officer Chief Keisha Brown to speak on this contract. First up, I think we're going to go to, I guess, Todd Carter maybe, and then Chief Brown, or again, I'll let you guys pick the order, but the floor is yours.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. President. When you think about the hybrid meeting concept, this is something that started for us actually back in September of 2021, as we received our first proposal from the vendor CTSI. That was in anticipation of us putting together a method by which we could be in person or be online and have both of those channels interact with one another in a post-COVID configuration. We had a number of stakeholders that came to the table to help figure this out. Members from the Council President's Office, the Mayor's Office, Facilities, IT, the Comptroller's Office, and we came up with a plan for several City Hall meeting rooms to be updated in the first phase with this new configuration. And then we had subsequent phases because we had other agencies like DOT that were a part and dealt with the public in a public meeting manner. So at that point in time, we worked with EMBU. We got the PO cut around the December timeframe. We worked with CTSI. All the orders had been placed, and that's when we ran into what I'll call a brick wall because some of the equipment that we needed was impacted by supply chain issues. At this point in time, we have about 2/3 of all of our equipment has been received, but the remaining third is pushed out. Our target date for the original hybrid meeting is the mid-April to mid-July, but I have to caution that those dates are moving based upon the supply chain. And so we, for that particular solution, are at the mercy of the supply chain. We've had multiple meetings with your offices and other offices. We've escalated to the leadership. We've been pressing them very hard. And as we get a full configuration in, we will begin to incrementally build those rooms out quickly. And in the interim, we are building out an alternative so that we can start at least, have this type of configuration available next month when we start opening up the public, especially toward the BOE.
Thank you, Director Carter. So just to kind of circle back on what you communicated and break it down in a little less technical terms, I think what you're telling the general public is that when we open up City Hall, that there will be some virtual abilities that they have today that won't necessarily be in place until we have the full-fledged hybrid solution available come mid-April to May, right?
We are building up a solution for the BOE room at the moment, and we plan to have that ready when we open up on April 4th.
And for city council,
We're still working with your office as to that configuration, but we will have this ready for the BOE by the 4th.
got you. And BMZA and Liquor Board, are they on the same track as BOE or?
Once we have, it's more dependent upon the rooms that we have as opposed to the actual agencies. So for the agencies that are using the BOE room, they could use this configuration.
So everybody, BMZA, Liquor Board, and BOE should be full-fledged hybrid come April 4th. However, from a city council perspective, we're still working on that timeline associated with some of the long lead items, and that pushes us to April, May timeframe, hopefully, right?
That is correct.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that clarification. At this point, Chief Brown, do you have anything to add to the discussion?
No, sir, I do not. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Chief Brown. At this point, I'll turn it over to the board members. I see the hand raised of Comptroller Henry. Comptroller Henry, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since the president took us out of the technical world and into more of the impact on the public, I want to go back to the technical world just to make sure that we understand specifically how is the equipment being purchased under this procurement, this emergency procurement. How is this going to augment what BSIT has already done to allow public access and participation in government meetings during our virtual time during the pandemic?
So it'll do a couple things. One, we will integrate with the Charm TV and give Charm TV, which also has a few upgrades that are pending as well, more functionality than it has had in the past. We will have better equipment that will eliminate the interference that occurs when you have open mics, multiple open mics in a room, and you have audio and visual equipment that is, communicating with each other. So that's another piece of it. We work with facilities to make sure that we will have what I'll call a better electrical configuration, given that we will have more power needs from the building, and also given the fact that just structurally there's some challenges in some of the rooms with where power is located and how it is situated. So it is a full upgrade of equipment, of technology, facilities relative to the equipment, and it is something that is much better today. When you look at our equipment today, in particular, it's equipment that hadn't been upgraded in tens of years. And so this is a much needed upgrade that will put us in the 22nd century or 22nd year of this century.
Okay, thank you. The president is an engineer by training. I am a social scientist by educational background. Thank you for indulging us as we each move into the other's comfort zones for making sure that we're getting all of the details of this out to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this point, are there any other questions or concerns from other members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, at this point, I'll accept a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is accepted. Next up, we have another emergency procurement for snow removal. This item can be found on pages 60 through 62. Item number 20, Bureau Procurement, Report of Emergency Procurement, Emergency Snow Removal Services. Once again, we have Procurement Chief, Chief of Procurement, Keisha Brown, to speak on this procurement item. Chief Brown, the floor is yours.
Good morning again, Honorable Member President Mosby. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this item. These items were procured under the Director of Finance Authority in accordance with the charter. And if there's no objections, I would like to defer to Director Henry Raymond to speak on this item.
Okay,
Thank you, Chief Brown. Director Raymond, the floor is yours.
Yep, thank you. For the particular emergency procurement, we initially went out on bid last summer with a RFP. The bid date opening was September 15, 2021. Vendors were solicited by posting on CityBuy and in local newspapers. 16 bids were received. The Minority and Women's Business Opportunity Office determined that only 3 bidders were compliant with the MBE WBE requirements. The snow equipment offered by the 3 compliant bidders were inadequate relative to the needs of the city. On December 8 of 21, it was recommended to the BOE to reject all bids in the best interest of the city. Following that decision, an emergency declaration was issued to the Department of Transportation for the snow emergency, and emergency agreements were authorized with all 16 bidders utilizing the same MBE WBE goals of 27% and 10%. The estimated amount of the 16 contracts was $9.1 million. To date, $4.7 million has actually been expended. And more importantly, the fiscal 22 snow budget is $6.8 million. So our snow expenses are $2.1 million less than the appropriation for this year. With that said, I'll address any questions.
At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Comptroller Henry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I guess the first question, okay. First, I want to just make sure that I'm following the timeline, which is 16 people bid, 16 companies bid. 13 of them were found non-compliant by MBU. We rejected all bidders, and then because we needed to have some snow removal capability, DOT went out and actually contracted with all 16 of the companies that put in bids, including the 13 whose bids were found non-compliant. We spent $4.7 million, I think it was.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So, and now we have to pay them for it, or we paid them and now we're paying ourselves back.
We have paid out $4.7 million for the services rendered.
So I guess my question would be, has MBU had an opportunity to review the actual, what was actually paid out, and assess whether, how the 16 different vendors did in terms of MBWB compliance?
I'll defer to the MBU office.
This is Chief Lundy. Mr. Comptroller, we have not had an opportunity to do a full compliance review of all of the data for the emergency procurement. We did get to review the initial data that was provided by DOT with their calculations of the performance for the emergency procurement.
And what did that tell you?
Comptroller, I just got the information yesterday, so I was only able to do a preliminary review, and we haven't verified it in the manner that we typically do at MBU, where we would verify the actual payments to all the subcontractors and have conversation with the prime and the subcontractors regarding their performance. So for us, we haven't really been able to draw ultimate conclusions in terms of the participation achieved. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out, though, that this is an emergency procurement now that we are able to put goals on, whereas in the past, all of these emergency procurements that we're discussing today would have no opportunity for participation in goals that would mandate that they use MBEs and WBEs.
Okay. I guess I don't know if this is. I guess this is back to finance. Is there some type of time pressure on us approving this? Because I would rather know the results of the level of MBU compliance, if possible, before we did the formal approval. I mean, the vendors have been paid. This is a question of us settling up internally. So is there a problem if we defer this till April 6th? And actually, I should ask, Mr. President, can I ask the
Yeah,
chief
I have
of
no
MBU
objection.
if that would give him enough time to do this analysis?
Yes, Comptroller, I yield the floor to you. You got all the questions you want.
Chief Lundy, if we deferred this until April 6th, would that give you enough time, or would you need more?
I believe that should be sufficient time for us to be able to complete the review. But it is dependent upon some of that supporting data getting back to us. And I'm not certain at this time if DOT already has documentary evidence to support the payments that were made to the MB and WB subcontractors. But I do believe we should be able to get that done.
Okay, Mr. President, could I ask that we defer this item until the April 6th meeting?
Yep, it'll be deferred to April 6th meeting. Thank you, Chief Lundy, as well as Director Raymond. This item is deferred. Next up, we have item on non-routine agenda can be found on page 75, Department of Finance, Baltimore City Fire Department Special Event Rate Increase. The request is to improve the increase of BCFD's special event rate fee for overtime worked by the assigned staff. At this time, I'd like to recognize representatives from the Fire Department to speak on behalf of this item. I'm not sure who's on from Fire Department, but the floor is yours.
President Mosby, Controller Henry, Chief Mayor Scott, and the rest of the Board of Estimates. My name is James Fisher. I'm the Chief of Finance for Baltimore City Fire Department. Discussed this with the Department of Finance, most notably our budget analyst under Henry Raymond, Bob Senemy. And they did a study many years ago, fee study for the city of Baltimore, which was back based on cost of 2007. So it's more than 10 years. So they have incrementally taken a look at different fees, most notably for the fire department, it's the EMS fee, and increased it based on current costs. This one specifically was based on an average of cost for the city of Baltimore for the fire department for overtime. So this raises it to what the people that are actually doing the work in fire prevention are being paid now. It's an average of $60. So with that increase, they're looking to increase the fees and increase the revenue to the city of Baltimore by over $200,000 annually.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. At this point, are there any questions or additional concerns from members of the board to the fire department? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Fisher.
Good morning, sir.
Well, first of all, I'm happy to see this item come before the board. This item directly addresses finding number 3 in the fire department's performance audit that was presented to the board last October. Finding number 1 of that report was, I'll quote, accounting and financial controls to manage invoicing, collections, and recording of special event and fire watch level 3 activities needs improvement, close quote. So we're glad to see that we're addressing finding number 3. Can you update the board on the progress that's been made to invoicing, collections, and processing of special events charges?
Well, that's an interesting point. Right now in Workday, they are going through a process of developing information that will be submitted for deposits, invoicing and deposits for all fees that are for the city of Baltimore, including the ones that you mentioned in that report. There's a presentation actually on Thursday at 10:30 for the fire department. Well, not just for the fire department, but all the fire, finance officers of the city of Baltimore, that Mr. Raymond and Karen Tolley are in the process of development. So I think probably the controller's office audits is part of that meeting. I'm not sure, Mr. Raymond, if you want to speak on that.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. Thank you.
Sure.
The finance department has primary responsibility for collections citywide of various fees. With the implementation of Workday as it relates to the accounts receivable module, there will be much more transparency, allowing agencies to drill down and understand exactly what's been collected, what's outstanding. So we believe that with this transparency, there will be significant improvement with the collection rates overall for all special events.
That sounds great. If our audits people weren't already planning to be there on Thursday morning, I'll make sure they are. Okay, Mr. President, thank you. That was the only question I had.
Thank you so much, Ms. Comptroller. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from other members of the board for the fire department? Hearing and seeing none, we're going to go to a vote. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 136, Department of Finance Master Service Agreement. This is a request in the amount of $96,760 to enter into a master service agreement with Paymentus Corporation to provide a full-featured electronic billing and payment solution. A protest, a supplemental protest, was received by Cuptic Rock LLP, representing ACI Payments Incorporated, and a response to the protest was received by DLA Piper, representing Paymentus Corporation. On behalf of Finance Department, we have Director Raymond here to walk us through this request. Director Raymond, the floor is yours.
Again, thank you. The services envisioned are professional in nature. The billing system requires mental and intellectual abilities to plan, design, analyze, program, and configure an electronic billing application. This payment system services clearly falls within the city's definition of professional services. And I'll repeat, services that are predominantly mental or intellectual rather than physical or manual, and require the application of special knowledge, technical skill, and the experience that comes from instruction, training, and the exercise of mental faculties. Now, leadership from the Department of Finance and the Controller's Office independently concurred that the services proposed are professional in nature. We are ever vigilant and guard against abuse of the professional services exception. There was no attempt to circumvent the procurement process or regulations. Further, the incumbent's assertion that it can provide the same payment options and cost savings is not meaningful, since it has not offered these services and cost savings previously to the city, even though it has held the contract since 2014. The actions taken by the incumbent after it learned the deadline had passed are not relevant, since 13 other vendors availed themselves of the opportunity to submit market information by the due date. In closing, there were no procurement violations related to this master services agreement. There was nothing improper or arbitrary with the designation of professional services. The Department of Finance's award recommendation complied with all laws and applicable regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Raymond. At this time, I'd like someone from Kutik Rock or one of the protesters to speak, I'll provide the opportunity. As we've done in the past, if there's multiple presenters from a protest, we will allow for the first protester to present their entire protest and their entire case. Any subsequent dealings and hearings from the actual protester will be timed. So at this point, is there anyone on from Kutik Rock or ACI Payments Incorporated?
Yes, President Mosby, this is Steve Surratt speaking on behalf of ACI. And with me today is Jennifer Blunt. But the two other people who will be speaking, if necessary, will be Mr. Mitchell, who is with ACI in a leadership capacity, and Mr. Schwanz. We submitted some filings on Monday, which I'm sure you've all had a chance to read now, so I don't want to belabor the points, but I just want to hit some highlights. The first is, as correctly noted, ACI has been your incumbent for well over 10 years, performing the work very well without any complaints, interacting with the city all along, and certainly has every bit of the capacity and ability of Paymentus or other competitors in the marketplace. As a matter of fact, ACI is the industry leader here. But naturally, we follow our contracts and we do what the contract requires. And if the city requires more, certainly we are more than willing to be responsive to that. But as right now, everything has been going very well. We have 2 additional option years, two option periods of 2 years each still left in the contract. Turning to the merits, the key here is whether or not we have professional services that are being predominantly provided for mental or intellectual purposes. The $96,970 proposed contract before you is just for integration. It's not for the actual system itself. What's on the table here is a 7-year deal, and we think that the revenues fairly estimated would be about $10 million that'll flow through that contract. So the $96,970 is less than 1%, certainly not predominantly when it comes to the work at hand. The other point is that we could actually avoid the $96,970 altogether if you keep ACI on board. So the city wouldn't have to spend a dime to continue. But if the city decides that it wants to do an RFP, which ACI is more than willing to participate in, then it's very likely that you would not have to spend the $96,970 anyway, because in a competitive environment, and you'll hear this from Mr. Mitchell, you will not expect any of these companies to charge that amount as part of their competitive proposals. The third thing we want to bring up is that we heard in the last meeting that the transmittal that occurred between the Department of Finance and the Comptroller's Office was misleading. It only talked about the integration work of the $96,970 and didn't talk at all about the full-blown $10 million implementation. And in looking at the city's rules, this may be splitting hairs, but I think it's important. The full contract, not just the transmittal letter, should have been provided to your office at the Comptroller's Office. And that didn't occur. And we believe we wouldn't be here today had Mr. Knighton been given the full facts. The other issue we want to bring up is about the RFI. We just want to realize this is at this point a total distraction, but I just want to mention it to you. Because Mr. Henry did ask me directly in the last meeting why it was that ACI didn't respond. So ACI learned of the RFI in December. It promptly made inquiries to the procurement office. The procurement official involved wrote back and said, it's too late to respond to the RFI, but it's not a procurement action. Nevertheless, ACI began immediately to put together the materials that would be responsive to the RFI, because an RFI is just an information gathering tool. It's a market research tool. And we were prepared to submit that when we learned that the board was taking up the Paymentus contract. So the the fact that we sat back and didn't do anything is not correct. We actually did make inquiries, and we were assured that this was not going to be a procurement action. And on the basis of that, we didn't see that there was going to be any type of a contract action taking place. So at this point, I'd like to turn to Mr. Mitchell, and he can elaborate. His affidavit is on file, but I think it would be helpful if you hear from him directly. Ben?
Okay, thank you, Steve. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Mr. President, for the time today. I'm Ben Mitchell. I'm head of biller operations at ACI. Also, I serve as president of ACI Payments Inc., which is the entity that's contracted here. I've been in the payments business for more than 33 years now and have very deep and intimate knowledge of how the systems work, and have been particularly involved in the innovation and development of this business model going back many, many years. And as Steve said, I do want to reiterate that the actual long-term value of this particular type of relationship is not in the implementation and setup fees. It is in the ongoing transactions that are happening in real time as citizens make their payments and the service fees are collected. Just a little bit about the payment system. Those service fees that are collected are largely paid out to the card issuers, the card networks, and the processors who are involved in facilitating the payments behind us. So I think it's an important point that we keep in mind that the integration and implementation is a very small piece of the larger puzzle here, which is the ongoing service fees collected for processing the payments. So I'm happy to answer any questions about background or business model or how we got here. So
Thank you very much. And then Mr. Schwans is here as well. And perhaps you could just say a quick word about the steps you took when you learned about the RFI.
That's right. When we heard about the RFI in December, we did, as Mr. Surratt said, we took steps to address the purchasing office to understand what the status of the RFI was, and requested to submit our proposal, or excuse me, our information. And that was promptly declined on behalf of the procurement department because they said that the RFI window was closed, that responses were due back in April, and that it wasn't a purchasing action. And so at that time, we didn't even know that there was any procurement steps being taken. When we found out that the board was taking up the paymentus agreement, then we got into this cadence of calls. And so we are ready to submit the RFI when the board is ready to receive it. And answer any questions on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, thank you. At this time, I do have a couple of questions for the administration, I guess in line with some of the questions in the past. I'm not sure who can answer from the administration, but was there an emergency that required us to go down this approach?
This is Henry Raymond. There was no emergency. We wanted to do this to provide more services to the citizens of Baltimore at a lower cost.
So if our goal was to get a little, I'm sorry, Mr. Tim. I'm sorry, Director Raymond. I thought you were finished.
Yeah. I was just going to say the present incumbent did not offer additional services and did not offer cost savings to the city since the inception of the contract in 2014.
Understood. So Director Raymond, and again, I'm not sure if you're the appropriate person to answer this line of question, but if there was not an emergency and if the overall goal was to drive to a lower cost, not only for the city, but also for our citizens, why didn't we decide not to go down a competitive bidding process?
Because we received an appropriate justification to have this designated as a professional services agreement.
No, I understand. And I understand we're working off of the confines of the charter. And I think you determined that this is a mental and intellectual purpose. particularly as it relates to the integration and implementation phase that we're approving here today of close to $100,000. I think the question I'm asking is for the overall product, the product that the citizens will be on the hook for the next 7 years, and the city will be on the hook for this next 7 years. While we had a vendor that had been in place for quite some time, if there was not an emergency to move in a different direction, why didn't we open it up for a competitive bidding process where you get actual competition and you really drive down the best-in-class offer associated with what's out there?
My response would be is that we were very transparent. We had 13 vendors that responded to our market survey. The fact that the incumbent missed it for whatever reason, that's their issue. The way I look at this is,
Yeah, and Director Raymond, I'm not advocating, arguing, or talking about one bidder over the other. I'm talking about in best interests of the city, and it's just standard procurement kind of 101 that you get, your best and final offer through a competitive bidding process, as opposed to just a request for information. So what I'm trying to understand and ascertain, and I've not been able to receive from the administration, knowing that we did not have an emergency, knowing that we had a vendor that was in place, knowing that we had time to actually do a competitive bidding process. And again, maybe someone from procurement office can speak up and tell me I'm different, but you get your best offer in any process in the private sector and this public sector when you actually do a competitive bidding process. That's how you get your best and final offer. I'm just asking, why did the city not decide to go down the path for this particular contract?
and I'll address that. For this particular initiative, we followed all applicable rules. The decision was made, we did not have to do a competitive procurement. We opened it up to the vendor community. 13 vendors responded. And we moved forward in accordance with all applicable laws and regulations.
Yes, I am not, Director Raymond, I'm not suggesting that any laws were broken and that we did not follow the charter. I think that there's a lot of structural issues inside of our city charter, specifically as it relates to procurement. I know the administration has been very vocal about breaking down some of the barriers and the issues associated with the structural problems that we have inside of our charter related to procurement. And I really point this out as a particular poster child. I mean, at the end of the day, what you've described today is any software that's developed for the city of Baltimore can really go down this pathway. It's not just the intellectual integration of it, but it's also the ongoing implementation of those services for a long period of time. This is 7 years. I think that if we take a step back and we honestly think that a contract of this award, of this magnitude, of this size, of the scope, and this impact to the citizens of Baltimore is just under the realm of professional services, I'm really hard pressed to think that anybody is logically assuming that. Again, as it relates to this particular piece of it, this $96,000 piece of it, now it's fair to assume if that was completely separated from the actual ongoing implementation, but we know that it's not the case because this is proprietary software that they're developing. So I'm just wanting to know, like, is there a reason outside of knowing that you guys stake on the confines of the law, you're consistent with the charter, that there was no nefarious actions or intent here, but outside of all of those things, knowing that everything was kosher there, was there any other reason, knowing that there was an emergency, that the city didn't decide for such a large contract to do a competitive bidding process?
We wanted to provide the services to more services to the citizens at reduced cost.
All right, and the way that you do that to provide enhanced services and reduction of cost is a competitive environment. So I assume that
professional services in accordance with the city charter.
Again, I realize that we're in accordance with the city charter. I hope that the administration will be the first to say that there's tremendous problems with the way we handle procurement, and we have always handled procurement with the city charter. So that is not kind of the best way to highlight why we've gone down this process. Just really want to understand and know from a competitive perspective why we went down this process. The next question I have is, I guess you gone down this process and Pimentas, the minority women business enterprise requirements, they're exempt from. Is that accurate?
I'll defer to MBU or BSET.
Are there any minority women business enterprise? I'm sorry, someone speaking up?
Yeah, this is Director Carter. My understanding is that the embargoes have been waived, but I see Dr. Lundy shows.
Director Lundy, are the embargoes waived on this particular contract?
Bear with me for 1 second, Mr. President. I'm looking into pulling up the information for
I
this.
will say that they are, because it's proprietary software, and typically we always waive them for proprietary software. So that's just my logic, but I wanted to confirm that today.
That's my understanding as well, but I wanted to get it in front of me. But I believe that would be accurate based on the discussion and my understanding of the contract being proprietary, that there would not be goals based on them being having proprietary software that they're utilizing.
All right. Do you want to confirm, or do you think it's going to take some time?
If I could get back to you, Mr. President, because I actually didn't have this matter up in front of me.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, just my logic real quick, and I'm not always right, so sometimes I'm wrong. So let's just, if you guys could just bear with me and say I'm right on this. There's proprietary software that is being developed for an essential need for the city of Baltimore. This software is going to not only be implemented, but also provide the services of the developer for a long period of time. I believe this contract is 7 years. This software is developed in-house, specific to the needs of the city of Baltimore, and is proprietary in nature, meaning that there's no other third party, no other vendor that would really know how to play with the secret sauce associated with this software, because this particular developer, in this case Pimentas, developed it specifically for the city of Baltimore. So when you typically go down that path, you waive MWBE goals, which is fine because, again, it's proprietary, specific to the needs of the city of Baltimore. The problem that I have at the core, and I've been trying to communicate and ask for clear direction from the administration for the past couple of weeks, is when you take that approach and you know that we're going down a path of software that's proprietary, when we don't have a competitive bidding process, there are two things that conflate in not a good product or not a good outcome for the citizens of Baltimore. One, again, you have a proprietary software with no MWBE goals, everything is waived. And then on the other hand, you have an RFI process that we're calling this long-term 7-year deal, professional services, that's not a competitive process. Yes, folks will respond to an RFI, but no one in an RFI world is going to respond not having a competitive process with their best-in-class offer. They're just going to respond with a price that's typically between 15 to 25% higher than you would get if you went through an actual competitive process. Again, if there's someone with more procurement knowledge on this call than me, definitely interested in hearing from you. So again, we have an idea where we've excluded minority women-owned businesses from this idea. We've gone down this path of this RFI where we don't have a competitive process. And now I think to the citizens, they're going to be left out with the loss of, I don't know, $10, $12 million as relates to the end of this contract because we did not go down a competitive process. Again, I would be very strong, and I've been very strong, and I've been the one to kind of defer this item for more information from the administration. But I think that this is the poster child of the issues that we've seen in our city. And I'm very concerned that we're continuing that same type of behavior. I think this is very consistent and akin to what we did on the last procurement deal, where we took the lowest bidder, the lowest technical score. We gave them a consulting contract to kind of look at our procurement process. And it's my thought process that folks are going to then ultimately come back behind and try to put them in as the vendor for this implementation. This is wrong. We have to change this. I cannot accept the path that we're moving down with this idea. This was not an emergency. We could have clearly put this out to competitive bid, where based off of the goals that Director Raymond communicated, would have produced a better outcome as it relates to pricing and cost. for not only the city of Baltimore, but also for our citizens. And two, probably competition is always driving through technology. A more competitive environment will always drive better outcomes as relates to enhancements and services. So I have grave concern with this. This is not a secret to anybody. We've talked about this time and time again, but something needs to change, and it needs to change quickly. At this point, are there any other questions or concerns from members? I see the hand raised of Director Henry Raymond.
Yep, thank you. Respectfully, I want to add this. With the present vendor, ACI, they have proprietary software. When we awarded the contract to them in 2014, there was no competition. The process that we have used for this initiative, there were 13 vendors that provided information. So in terms of transparency, this process, this selection was more open and transparent than what was done back in 2014.
I appreciate that, Director Raymond. I would just like to argue with the administration. I hope that we do not take our barometer of success based off of what was done 8 or 7 years ago. The idea that it wasn't competitive 7 years ago means absolutely nothing. The fact that we could have had a competitive process today, and we decided to still go down this pipeline of just doing an RFI and moving forward. That's extremely problematic. If the administration does not understand my concerns there, we have bigger issues, and we need to continue to talk about it. I hope that this idea of us reevaluating our procurement process, that same mentality that the administration used on this particular bid is significantly a change by whatever recommendations that we got from the lowest scoring technical bidder that this board also selected on the procurement reform. So I hear you. Again, I know it was within the charter, I know it was within the law. I know that we were more transparent than the city has been back in 2014. However, that is not good enough. We know that a competitive process is going to drive a better product and is going to drive ultimately better cost results for the citizens of Baltimore and as well as for the city of Baltimore. At this point, are there any? I see Mr. Paul Taberzi. You will have your opportunity to speak, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right now, we're just have it open to the board for any questions or concerns of the administration regarding this process. So at this time, are there any additional questions or concerns? Before you speak, Comptroller, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know that, and I'm sorry for not stopping him, but Mr. I forget his name, but from the protester, ACI, he stated that you guys did not have all the information and you probably would have made a different, had a different decision based off of all the information. I don't know if you want to speak on behalf of that, but I just want to put on the record that that was not from the comptroller's office. That was from the actual protester. So if you would like to address that, Comptroller Henry, please do so. But at this point, I yield the floor to you.
Mr. President, I was just going to call your attention to the fact that Mr. Lundy from MBU had his hand up also, and I didn't know if you wanted to take additional information from agencies before going to the protesters.
No, thank you. Do you want to address if your office would have taken a different approach? Do you still think that you would have taken the same approach?
We are comfortable with the interaction we had with finance.
Got it. It's Mr. Chief Lundy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to follow up with you regarding the goals, and I did confirm that there are not MBE and WBE goals on this contract due to the vendor utilizing proprietary software to do the processing of payments remotely.
So my logic wasn't crazy. Thank you for
no, not at all, Mr.
making
President.
me not appear to be crazy on this call, Chief Lundy. I really appreciate that. Are there any other questions or concerns from members of the administration? Hearing and seeing none, we're going to go to this is the order, so everyone kind of understands and knows. I know that the board is pretty much locked in on the direction that we're going to go. But to be fair, we're going to provide Mentis an opportunity to speak. And then I see the hand raised again from ACI. I'll allow them to close us out. And then from there, we're going to go into a vote unless there's any additional questions, concerns, or unreadiness associated with this item. So at this time, Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mayor Scott, Comptroller Henry, Solicitor Shea, and Director Mitchell. Paul Taberzi, I'm here in the Baltimore office at the Piper firm, and I'm proud to represent Paymentus, a good client of our firm. The board is well familiar with this item. I think it's the third meeting. And Mr. Raymond did a better job than I in explaining the background and the process. Mr. Raymond's office acted correctly. The solicitor's office correctly acted. We've looked at this. One of my colleagues is a national procurement expert. He's looked at this. The city got it right. The administration got it right. There's no legal problems. And beyond that, I do want to point out there were 13 other companies competing for this. We prevailed. We're going to do a great job. We're a national leader, and we're going to give the citizens of the city a lower cost, better option than they've had with respect with ACI. And that's why Mr. Raymond's team selected us. This is going to save money for the citizens who really are paying the freight for this. There is a ticket for the city itself, but
excuse me, Paul.
Yes, sir.
I have to interrupt. Channel 25 has stopped televising.
I must have had a bad reaction on the television, Mr. Comptroller.
No, at TV 25 has had a lot of turnover, and I think they're going through some technical problems and issues. I would hate to kind of push this on to another meeting. And we have the emergency walk-on item from the AFRAM as well. Let me try to get on the phone with the TV 25 folks, and let me be right back. So if we could just put the meeting in recess. We're going to come back to you, Paul, shortly. So give me about like 5 minutes, folks.
Yes, sir.
So the title card's up. Charm TV is actively working. Thank you to the members of Charm City TV. If you could bring us back, we're going to come out of recess. Just for the record, the time is 10:39. We're coming out of a brief recess for some slight technical difficulty. But the amazing members of Charm City TV was able to bring us back. So we really, really appreciate those efforts. Where we went into recess, I believe Paul Taberzi from the actual bid awardee was speaking on behalf of the process and his client. So Paul, the floor is yours.
Mr. President and members of the board, Paul Taberzi again with Baltimore firm Piper representing Paymentus. A couple of things. We won this process. We're a national company. We're going to do a great job. We're going to be a lower cost, better option with more platforms available. PayPal, Venmo, Amazon Pay, Apple Pay, Google Pay. Folks can go into Walmart and pay with cash. These are great services which the city and the citizens deserve and should get. The board is well aware of this item. It's the third board meeting with respect. Really nothing new was said in the material that was filed on Monday by ACI. And I will say, we've played by the rules. We won, and we believe Mr. Raymond's team did a great job. The solicitor is correct legally. This is the process. And it was pointed out by Mr. Raymond, and this is powerful, ACI itself was selected in exactly the same way some years ago, as Mr. President pointed out. So we would respectfully ask the board to approve this. We want to get to work. We want to begin the implementation, there's no reason to delay. The city did it right. If I may, Mr. President, just briefly, I'd love to call Jerry Portocalis, our Chief Commercial Officer of Paymentus, just to say a couple of words. But I do think the board's well familiar with this, and I think Mr. Raymond did a terrific job, better than I. So let me ask Jerry just to say a few words, if that's okay, Mr. President.
Yeah, Jerry, if you could wrap us up in a minute.
Yes, sir. Thank you to the Honorable Board, Mayor Scott, President Mosby, City Solicitor Shea, Controller Henry, Director Mitchell for the opportunity to address you very briefly here, and a couple of items that I think would be helpful to provide some clarification as we wrap this up. As the team did throughout the process, they did a very thorough due diligence on going through the different services that we offer, and I'm sure they did with all the other vendors that were also invited to participate. There was a BAFO that was conducted. It was very thorough, tough, and your team did a great service to the city and its citizens with the rates that they were able to receive from Paymentus. And if we had more time, I could show you the bruises from the residual pain from the arm twisting of those negotiations and of those discussions that were had to get to the final pricing. The implementation fees, as a second point of clarification that have been spoken about previously, of the $96,000, that is incorrect. The $96,000 is for new kiosk hardware, giving the opportunity for Baltimore citizens to make payments without a person being present. That $96,000 is for the vast majority of the hardware that would be incurred, whether it was Paymentus or the incumbent, or perhaps it would have been more than $96,000. And then, so there is no fee for implementation that Paymentus charges or would be passed on to the city. And lastly, to simply state that the fees for the contract would have been incurred by the citizens, whether it was through Paymentus or ACI. This is not a Paymentus model of any sort. It is the model that we have, whereby the fees are passed along to the citizens using the service. Thank you all for your consideration. As Paul stated, we are very excited, very eager, and incredibly well qualified to support you in the city in this very important implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Next, last but not least, we're going to hear from the protester again, just for any final remarks before we move to vote.
Thank you very much, and I'll be very quick. Again, you've heard a lot from me, and I also am a government contract national expert. And I think, Mr. President, you've very well framed the issue before you. But factually, when the contract was awarded to ACI back in 2014, ACI had already been the incumbent. It had been paired together with another bank, and the city made a decision that they were going to reprocure the banking services. And at the same time, they realized they couldn't do the other half of the work, and that's why ACI was given the contract to begin with. So it's incorrect to characterize what happened back in 2014 as being anything comparable to what occurs today. The second thing is that in 2010, there was repricing that did take place. I'm sorry, in 2020. So the city has been in discussions with ACI all along on a regular basis. They have regular meetings. And it's not correct to say that what we offered back in 2014 is what you have today. It's definitely been dynamic and changed. The last thing is just what was said by Mr. Portakassis, and that is professional services are for professional services, not for kiosks. And so if what you're being asked to do today, if you spend $96,970 on kiosks, that's a totally different fact that we hadn't even heard before. So I just want to put that on board and let you know that's just still another reason why this entire matter should be put on the shelf and allow ACI to continue. If the city wants to go through an RFP process, we are more than happy to compete. As I've been saying all along, ACI goes head to head with Paymentus and many other of these companies on a national basis. And we feel we would definitely come out on top in any competitive environment. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Steve. And just for my final remarks, very consistent to what I've been saying over the past couple of weeks. There is no acceptable measure for us not to go down a competitive bidding process for this. I think it's been used, I guess, by the administration as well as by the winner that this was a competitive process. And again, I'm no procurement expert, but if you want a competitive process, you do an RFP, you don't do an RFI. Typically for the general public, RFI stands for Request for Information, where you put out in the universe some high level kind of approach to something, and you see what vendors are kind of out there that could meet those needs. In a lot of cases, typically in the private sector, an RFI turns into an RFP to drive for that level of competition. Another major concern that we continue to point out is the fact that knowing that this is software related, that there are no minority women-owned enterprise goals or objectives built into this. So when you definitely go down that path and then you eliminate the idea for any level of competition, you potentially eliminate the idea for access to minority or women-owned businesses through another bid or through an independent bid of their own. Lastly, again, when we talk about professional services, it's astonishing the kind of talk that we've had over the past couple of weeks of just taking a step back and saying that we accept this as professional services. We are basically saying the city of Baltimore will accept any software development and implementation as professional services, and that is not the motivation of why the professional services piece has been carved out in this special way. Lastly, to that point, as Steve pointed out, it has been determined that even with this $96,000, and I think Jerry said it, that an overwhelming amount of it will go to hardware. Again, that hardware was not competitively bid out, and maybe Paymentus would have come with the best-in-class fee, pricing, services, and hardware. But it's important for us to always drive towards that competitive process. Really, really disappointed in the outcome of where we are with this today. I know this has been a priority of the administration to get this approved. We've deferred it a couple times. At this time, I'm not going to hold it up. You know, the administration has 3 out of 5 votes on this board, and it's time to vote. So if, unless there's any other questions, concerns, or any readiness from members of this board. Hearing and seeing none, at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Second.
So it's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. Please mark me down as a nay. So we have 4 ayes to 1 nay. This item is approved and moved on. Thank you to Jerry and Paul, as well as to the folks from the protester. I think that the one thing that we get out of this is good government. We try to drive an extremely transparent process on this board. We try to provide due process associated with whatever is brought to the board. We also try to provide a tremendous amount of opportunity for folks to communicate not only to this board, but to the general public, their perspective, their concerns, their issues. And I think that this was a glaring example of that. So everybody who participated, thank you. Clearly, we have to move on at this point. So thanks again. Finally, as noted, thank you. Finally, as noted by the Comptroller Henry at the top of the meeting, we have a walk-on item this morning from the administration. It's a transfer of funds from the Department of Recreation and Parks to the Baltimore Civic Fund to support the 2022 AFRAM Festival. At this time, I recognize Director Reginald Moore to explain this item. Director Moore, the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Nicole Green, Deputy Director of Administration. I'll be speaking on behalf of BCRP.
Well, Deputy Director Green, the floor is yours. I yield it to you.
Thank you, Council President Mosby, Honorable Mayor Scott, and members of the board. Recreation and Parks is requesting a transfer of funds to cover AFRAM expenses. We were prepared to submit this proposal for the April 6th meeting, but when we went back to finalize some prices, we realized that we have some deposits that need to be put down before April 6th, and or the prices will double. So with that being said, we are asking if we could secure the funds earlier. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Deputy Director. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of this board to Recs and Parks? I see the hand raised of Comptroller Henry. Comptroller Henry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Deputy Director. I do have some questions about the budget.
Okay.
That was attached to the memo.
Yes, sir.
There are a couple line items that I wanted to ask about. One is backstage decor for VIP area, but then in parentheses, it says glow bars, benches, tents with AC, and flooring. And I'm like, so are we talking about the actual venues backstage, or are we talking about decor for them?
We're talking about both. All of that is combined in that cost, so that the area for the entertainers is set up and comfortable for them.
Okay, gotcha. And then There are two different line items. One is road to AFRAM talent and local talent for second stage. Can you talk about both of those?
Sure. So the local talent stage is where we will have local artists. We have a stage set up for them on that day. And then the road to AFRAM, there will be some small activations leading up to AFRAM to get everyone excited. And there,
Okay.
that's why, yes.
Gotcha. So those are multiple events preceding AFRAM itself.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
And do out of home ads, and then it says in parentheses, billboards, transit ads, posters, and vehicle wrap. I assume that's all in the Baltimore area.
Yes,
I just
sir.
didn't understand why it's called out of home.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's the billboards, basically things that are not going to reach people inside of their home. They're out
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay.
outside, out see the vehicle wraps. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I think the only other one that I wanted to check in on is there's a line item for influencers. And in parentheses, it says paid, custom, curated, and published by notable social media influencers.
Yeah, so those are people who have a lot of followers on Instagram, YouTube, who will be able to get people excited about AFRAM, have them come out to AFRAM. A lot of people do what they do, hence is why they're called influencers. So we used them last year and it was very successful, and we wanted to try to do that again this year.
So we pay people to retweet our stuff?
We pay them to actually do their own stuff. So they'll be out and about at some of the events. They'll do some pre-recordings for us to get people excited about it. Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, we should talk about that at some point. I think you're pretty influential. All right, Mr. President, that's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Control. I see the hand of Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
I was just gonna let the comptroller know that he would be considered an influencer with some of his internet posts as well. That's all, Mr. President.
Yeah, but then I'd have to sell the kids on that one, because most of my posts that get a lot of reactions are family based.
Yeah,
But okay.
either you have to put on the turnover chain or dress up as Santa Claus, or both, for the maximum coverage for your influencing background, Ms. Comptroller. With that said, I will open this up unless there's any questions or concerns. I think we can vote this out.
Make a motion, Mr. President, motion to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
This has been moved and seconded properly at this time. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much, Deputy Director Green.
Thank you.
Are there any items that board members would like to point out or note before we close out? Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, just want to appreciate you and the entire board for the approval of the wage increases. Is something long overdue, and just very appreciative and great work from the Office of Civil Rights on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are there any additional questions or concerns or points of interest members of the board would like to point out? Hearing and seeing none, as there's no new business before the desk, we will adjourn. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, April the 6th at 9 a.m. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Sorry for the slight technical difficulty in the middle. Baltimore, please stay safe, and we absolutely love you.
Good afternoon again, everyone. We are navigating quite a few respondents on bid number 1 for today. The way this works is my able colleagues at the end of the dais here, Miss Audrey Quarles and Miss Brenda Covington, are opening the bids and organizing them so that my colleague James Knighton can read the bids to me, and then I read them back for accuracy and affirming that all the parts are in place. In some instances, as in the case of bid number 1, which we'll share the details of that shortly, this bid actually has subtotals and is not fully totaled, so we will only be, in this case, reading the names of the responders to this bid because we don't have totals to provide at this time. It'll be referred to the agency, in this case, the Bureau of Procurement, for review and totaling. So bid number 1 today is Bureau of Procurement, contract number 50006418, janitorial cleaning services for groups 1 through 9. And I believe there is a bid bond required, and we'll be referring again the bids and all of the contents of those bids to procurement for a more detailed review post-opening. So, Jim, may we have the first contractor's name?
First contractor is Now, N-O-W.
You might need to take your mask off, so sorry, we can go faster.
First contractor is Now, all capitals N-O-W, LLC.
Address?
9103 Woodmore Center Drive, number 316, Lanham, Maryland, 20706.
And the bid amount.
We're just reading the
Oh, I'm
names
sorry,
for
I
these.
forgot. Sorry, folks.
Janitorial bond is included.
And we have an original and,
One copy.
thank you, that was Now LLC, located in Lanham, Maryland, and we received an original and 1 copy. Next respondent.
Next is LT, capital L, capital T, Services, Inc.
LT Services, Inc.
They are 2815 Heartland, H-A-R-T-L-A-N-D Road, Suite 300, Merrifield, M-E-R-R-I-F-I-E-L-D, Virginia, 22043.
And is there a bid bond?
There is a janitorial bond. That's what's required
Got
by
it.
this solicitation.
And we have an original.
Original and 3 copies.
That respondent name was LT Services, Inc.
Next is Pritchard, P-R-I-T-C-H-A-R-D, Industries, LLC, 8391 Old Courthouse Road, Suite 325, Vienna, Virginia, 22182.
Is there janitorial bond?
Okay. There is a certificate of insurance. I do not see a janitorial bond.
And we have an original,
Just an original.
just an original.
Yes.
That respondent was Pritchard Industries, LLC.
Inc. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pritchard Industries, Inc.
Yes.
Because there are so many of these, when we get to the end, I will read all of these respondents again for folks that are watching and trying to keep track.
Okay, ready for the next one?
I am.
Broadway Services Inc.,
Mm-hmm.
3709 East Monument Street, Baltimore, 21205.
Is there a janitorial bond?
Yes.
Original?
Original plus 4 copies.
That respondent was Broadway Services Inc.
All right, next bidder
Yes.
is C&S Jones, C&S Jones Group, LLC, 400 East Pratt Street, 8th floor, Baltimore, 21202.
Janitorial bond?
No. We have a certificate of insurance, but no bond.
And we have an original.
Just an original.
That bidder was C&S Jones Group, LLC.
Yes. Next bidder,
Yes.
Golden Gate Service, Inc.
Spelled the way I think.
Uh-huh,
Golden Gate Service.
Inc., yes. 2812 Old Lee Highway,
L-E-E.
Suite 300, Fairfax, Virginia, 22031.
Cert of insurance or
Janitorial bond.
an original.
Original and 1 copy.
That bidder was Golden Gate Service, Inc.
Yes. Okay, next bidder,
Yes.
Multicorp, M-U-L-T-I-C-O-R-P.
All one word?
Inc.
Yep.
9693 Gerwig, G-E-R-W-I-G Lane, Suite O, as in Oliver, Columbia, Maryland, 21046.
Janitorial bond?
Certificate of insurance, I do not see a bond.
Original,
Original plus one copy.
that bidder was Multicorp Inc.
Yes. Next bidder, P2, letter P, number 2, Maintenance Services, LLC. 8750 Cherry Lane, Suite C17, Laurel, Maryland, 20707. See a certificate of insurance, I do not see a bond.
Original,
Original plus two. Two copies.
that bidder was P2 Maintenance Services LLC.
Yes. Next bidder, Nadal, Nadal, Company, LLC, 5923, Robindale, all one word, Robindale Road, Catonsville, Maryland, 21228. No janitorial bond, there is a certificate of insurance.
And original,
Original plus one copy.
that bidder was Nadal Company LLC.
Yes. Next bidder, Beck, B-E-C-K, and Call, C-A-L-L, Professional Services, 9314, Kendall, K-E-N-D-A-L, Circle, Laurel, Maryland, 20723. Janitorial bond is included. Just the original.
That bidder was Beck and Call Professional Services, Laurel, Maryland.
Yes.
Got it.
Correction, they have 2 copies, original plus 2 copies
Thank you.
for Beck and Call. All right, next bidder, Spectacular On-Site, O-N-S-I-T-E, Staffing, Inc., 7612 Baltimore Annapolis Boulevard, Glen Burnie, Maryland, 21060. Janitorial bond is not included. There's a notation that it will be obtained before the contract is signed.
And we have an original?
It is, there's an original and 1 copy.
Thank you.
All right, next bidder is GNT, capital G, capital N, capital T, Group, LLC, 1503 9th Street Northwest, Suite 202, Washington, D.C., 20001. Janitorial bond, again, there's a notation, the policy will be obtained before the contract is signed. So
Original plus?
original plus 1 copy.
That bidder was GNT Group, LLC.
Yes.
And again, for folks watching, I will read through all of these bidders again once we complete all of the openings, in case anyone's trying to keep track.
Okay, next bidder is Hands On, 2 words, Hands On LLC, 451 Hungerford, Hungerford Drive, Suite 119, Rockville, Maryland, 20850. There's a certificate of insurance, but no bond, and we have an original +2.
That bidder was Hands On LLC.
Yes. Next bidder is Trust, Trust, Cleaning Solutions, 1250 Connecticut Avenue Northwest, Suite 700, Washington, D.C., 20036. Do not see a bond. And there's original +1 copy.
No cert of insurance either?
No.
Okay. That bidder was Trust Cleaning Solutions.
Yes.
It's hard to make this one exciting, Jim. I know you're trying.
Okay, next bidder is DSC, capital D, capital S, capital C, Solutions, LLC, 349 West Main Street, Suite 104, Leola, Leola, Pennsylvania, 17540. No janitorial bond. There is a certificate of insurance. Original plus original +2.
That bidder was DSC Solutions, LLC.
Yes. right, next bidder. United States Service Industries, Inc., USSI. 4340 East West Highway, Suite 204, Bethesda, Maryland, 20814. Do have a janitorial bond and original +1 copy. That is the last bidder that I have, the last submission I have.
Woo-wee. That was our last bidder, United States Service Industries, Inc. Before we move on to the next one, I believe our colleagues have abandoned us at this point, or at least momentarily. We have just finished opening our first bid for the day. That contract number was B50006418. Janitorial cleaning services for groups 1 through 9, issued by the Bureau of Procurement. And the respondents, or bidders rather, to that contract solicitation are Beck and Call Professional Services of Laurel, Maryland, Broadway Services Inc. of Baltimore, Maryland, CNS Jones Group LLC of Baltimore, Maryland, DSC Solutions LLC of Leola, Pennsylvania, GNT Group LLC of the District of Columbia, Golden Gate Service Inc. of Fairfax, Virginia, Hands On LLC of Rockville, Maryland, LT Services Inc. of Merrifield, Virginia, Multicorp Inc. of Columbia, Maryland, Nadal Company LLC of Catonsville, Maryland, NAL LLC of Lanham, Maryland, P2 Maintenance Services LLC of Laurel, Maryland, Pritchard Industries Inc. of Vienna, Virginia, Spectacular On-Site Staffing Incorporated of Glen Burnie, Maryland, Trust Cleaning Solutions of the District of Columbia, and United States Service Industries Inc., Bethesda, Maryland. Apologies if I mispronounced any names in that wide array of bidders. And these bid results will be posted at the completion of all bid openings today. You can find those on Comptroller Henry's website. Please check there for the results. We'll have them posted as fast as we can at the end of this meeting. We're now moving on to the opening of bid number 2 for today, issued by the Bureau of Procurement. That contract number is B50006442. Parts, service, and maintenance for in-ground and above-ground lifts. And Jim, we're ready for the first bidder.
We have one bid.
We have one bid.
Allen, A-L-A-N, Tye, T-Y-E, 2 words, Allen Tye, and Associates, L-C, 9669D, Main Street, Fairfax, Virginia, 22031.
And the bid amount, please.
Bid amount is $351,500.
And we have an original?
Just an original.
Just an original. Okay, Jim, I'm going to read that back to you. The bidder was Allen Tye and Associates, LLC, of Fairfax, Virginia, and the bid amount was $351,500. That's 351,500.00.
Yes.
That is the only bid received.
Yes. Do you have the sheet for bid number 1?
I do not, but I can print my sheet to go on top. Okay. We're moving on to bid number 3 for today. This bid was issued by the Bureau of This solicitation was issued by the Bureau of Procurement, contract number B5000-6471. Sodium hypochlorite? Did I spell that right? It seems like it should be hydrochlorite. Can you check me?
Yeah. It's hypochlorite.
Oh, okay.
Hypochlorite, hypochlorite.
I did spell it right. That contract name is sodium hypochlorite solution 15%. And the first bidder.
We have just one bidder.
Just one bidder.
It's CUNY, Kuehne, Chemical Company, Inc., 86 North Hackensack Avenue. And I think it's Kearny, Kearny, New Jersey, Kearny, New Jersey, 07032.
Did you say K?
Uh-huh.
EA, okay.
Kearny, New Jersey.
And the bid amount?
07032. 1 second. Okay, there are 3 line items. They bid on 2 of the 3. So. All right,
Okay,
so
so
we'll just go with the name of the company.
This was a 3-part bid, and the bidder has provided numbers for 2 sections. So we can't offer a total bid. We're going to refer this to the agency for review. But I do want to repeat the bidder information. It's CUNY Chemical Company, Inc. That's Kuehne.
Right.
And they're out of Kearny, New Jersey. And the bid amount the bid total will be determined by the Bureau of Procurement, and that was an original plus 1?
Original plus 1, yes.
Thank you. Bid number 4 for today is a solicitation is issued by the Bureau of Procurement, contract number B5000-6473. Contract name is Pickup and Disposal for Biomedical and Pharmaceutical Waste.
First bidder
I'm ready for the
is
first bidder.
Advant, and that's ADVANT hyphen, and then the next part is all capitals, Edge, EDGE, so Advant Edge Solutions of Middle Atlantic, Inc. 1 Shea, SHEA Way, Newark, Delaware, 19713.
The bid amount?
Bid amount is $36,288.
And I'm going to repeat that information back to you. The bidder is Advant Edge Solutions of Middle Atlantic, Inc., out of Newark, Delaware, and the bid amount is $36,288, 36,288.00.
Correct. We have an original and 1 copy. Next bidder is P2, letter P, number 2, Cleaning Services, LLC, 8750 Cherry Lane, C17, Suite C17, Laurel, Maryland, 207 0807.
And the bid amount?
$402,300.
And we have an original?
Original and 2 copies.
That bidder was P2 Cleaning Services LLC out of Laurel, Maryland, and the bid amount was $402,300, 402,300.00.
Yes. Next bidder is Biomedical Waste Services, Inc., 7610 Energy Parkway, Baltimore, Maryland, 21226.
And the bid amount?
$30,375.
Original plus?
Original plus 1.
That bidder was Biomedical Waste Services, Inc., out of Baltimore, Maryland, and the bid amount was $30,375, 30,375.00.
Correct. That's the last one for that.
And that was the final bid, the final of 3 for contract number B50006473, pickup and disposal for biomedical and pharmaceutical waste.
Yes.
Okay, this is bid number 5, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So we're now opening bid number 5, solicitation issued by the Bureau of Procurement. Contract number B50006475. Contract name, 1-ton crew cab, 4x4 open utility.
All right, we have one bid for this. Pacifico, P-A-C-I-F-I-C-O, Ford, Inc., 6701 Essington, E-S-S-I-N-G-T-O-N Avenue, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19153.
And the bid amount?
$87,077.
That bidder was Pacifico Ford, Inc., out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the bid amount was $87,077.
Yes.
87,077.00.
Yes.
And we have an original plus?
Plus 2 copies.
And that was the only bidder for contract number B50006475.
Yes.
Bid number 6. This solicitation was issued by the Bureau of Procurement, contract number B50006480. The contract name, 3/4 ton crew cab 4x4 pickup. And the bidders are.
This has a different solicitation number and name on it.
For number 6? This is 6480, yes?
Yes. Bid number 6, Bureau of Procurement, B 5000-6480, 3/4 ton Super Crew cab 4x4 pickup, no bids received.
Okay, confirming for folks that are following, contract number 6480, there were no bids received. Bid number 7 for today was a solicitation issued by the Bureau of Procurement, contract number B 5000-6484, contract name Copper Cable Installation, Maintenance, and Repair Services. Our first bidder.
First bidder is SCD, capital S, capital C, capital D, Information Technology, LLC, 7161 Columbia Gateway Drive, Suite C, Columbia, Maryland, 21046.
And the bid amount.
Total bid, $1,188,075.45.
45 cents. Original plus,
Original plus 2 copies.
okay, that bidder was SCD SCD Information Technology LLC out of Columbia, Maryland. And the bid amount was $1,188,075.45. That is 1,188,075.45.
Yes. Next bidder, Blue Star Technologies.
All
and
one word?
It is all one word, but the S is capitalized. So capital B, LUE, capital S, TAR. Technologies, Inc., 4401 Erdman Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland, 21213.
And the bid amount.
$1,748,430.
And we have an original.
Original plus 2 copies.
That bidder was Blue Star Technologies, Inc., Baltimore, Maryland. The bid amount was $1,748,430. 1,748,430.00.
Yes.
Thanks.
Next bidder, Brown's Communications, Inc., 10995 Golden West, that's 2 words, Golden West Drive, Suite E, Hunt Valley, Maryland, 21031.
The bid amount?
$845,150.
And we have an original.
Original and 1 copy.
That bidder was Brown's Communications, Inc., Hunt Valley, Maryland, and the bid amount was $845,150. That's 845,150.00.
Yes. Next bidder is Highlander Contracting Company, LLC, 2401 Stringtown, all one word, Road, Sparks, Maryland, 21152.
And the bid amount?
$1,323,450.
And we have an original?
Original plus one copy.
That bidder was Highlander Contracting Company, LLC, out of Sparks, Maryland, and the bid amount was $1,323,450. That's 1,323,450.00.
Yes. Next bidder is Technical Specialties, Inc., 9901 Business Parkway, Suite K, Lanham, Maryland, 20706.
And the bid amount?
$415,965.
And we have an original?
Original plus one copy.
That bidder was Technical Specialties, Inc., out of Lanham, Maryland, and the bid amount was $415,965. That number again is 415,965.00.
Yes. Last bidder, Plexus, PLXUS, Installations, Inc., 6400 Frankford, FRANKFORD Avenue, Suite 17, Baltimore, Maryland, 21206.
And the bid amount?
$1,304,490.
And we have an original?
Original and one copy.
That bidder was Plexus Installations, Inc., out of Baltimore, Maryland. Excuse me. And the bid amount was $1,304,490. That number again is 1,304,490.00.
Yes. It's the last submission for that solicitation.
And that was our last bid on that item. Bid number 8. Is this our final for today?
It is, yes.
Okay, bid number 8 and our final opening for today, solicitation issued by the Bureau of Procurement, contract number B5000-6487, contract name Ford Explorer XLT four-wheel drive.
We have one bid submitted.
Mhm.
Bidder is Pacifico, Pacifico Ford, Inc., 6701 Essington, Essington Avenue, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19153.
19153.
Yes.
And the bid amount?
$45,205.
Our single bidder for that contract is Pacifico Ford, Inc., out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the bid amount is $45,205. That number again is 45,205.00.
Yes. And we have an original and 2 copies.
Oh, thank you. And that's our final bid and opening. So folks, that is our final bid and opening for today. Thanks for joining us. Thank you to TV25 for bringing us back by popular demand. And special thanks to my colleagues, Ms. Brenda Covington, Ms. Audrey Quarles, and Mr. James Knighton for helping us open the bids today. Have a good one, Baltimore.